And so I think it begs the question of, will Lyft survive or should they get acquired? And if they get acquired, who would be in the best position to acquire them? Personally, I think it's going to be an OEM manufacturer like a Ford or a GM, because one of the biggest cost centers of these ride sharing thing is the equipment for the employee. They have to pay for that car. And for Lyft or Uber, 80% or more of the revenue that you're getting is going out to these drivers. And if you are a GM or a Ford and you own the production of that vehicle, that's either revenue for you. I would design the car to be different. This is not a car that needs to go 150 miles per hour. You're transporting passengers. And so the car of the future, if it's designed for transportation, will really just be another type of taxi. And so for a Ford or a GM, that's probably a cheaper type of a car. It's a very specific type of a car. But I think that they could own that vertical better, and it would probably be better in their stack than if it were a separate company that has to incur all of these costs all over the place. Uber tried to do a leasing program. A lot of the people that want to drive for Uber don't have the right kind of car. There has to be within a certain number of years, has to be a four-door, all of these things. So a lot of people who wanted to drive for Uber didn't have the required car. So Uber did this lease program and they could not do it profitably. They just couldn't do it because they are getting the car from somewhere else and it didn't work.
Yeah. I think there's two things here. So one, I fundamentally think that once, we get to truly self-driving cars, I think Lyft becomes a very interesting proposition, right? Because I do think that the logistics technology, I do think the number of consumers that they have, if they can make it more economical. So for instance, I loved when Uber and Lyft had those subscription services where you would get a discount on like packages of rides. I think especially now living in LA, there's some nights where I'm just like, I really would prefer if I could take, some kind of transportation that was economical. Because the thing about LA, so for people who are listening who are not from LA is actually very large in terms of like the amount of space you have to drive. You're actually driving for, potentially 20 miles to go to a meeting. And it makes sense because it's so many people, it's such a large space. And so it could take you 55 minutes, take you an hour, take you an hour and a half to get to a meeting. And so it would be nice to be able to sit in the back seat of something and do other things while you're doing it versus what I do now, which just have a lot of snacks and try not to get pissed off because traffic is so bad. Right. So like, it would be better to have that. But I think it only really works when you have driverless cars. Because to your point, they lose 80% on the drivers. And the thing is, drivers should get paid to this is not a don't pay people conversation. People should get paid for whatever work that they're doing. But a business is only as useful as it achieves product market fit. And remember, we said the last point to product market fit is profitability, right? You have to be able to do this business profitable. And so that's why I do agree with you that I do think that some kind of third party who can actually supply the cars for a very economical model, of course, I do think it becomes a very interesting value.